challenge. I'm going to move past it. I'm going to shatter that glass ceiling and I'm going to keep going.
It hurts to smash a glass ceiling.
Wow, we literally have to be superheroes to walk through this life.
While I might have been the first, I pray that I'm not the last.
Welcome to Taking Your Lead. How are you two?
I'm
Good.
great.
Ooh, yeah. I wanted to do it just so that you would say it at the same time.
And we were being so polite.
You were being so polite. Screw politeness. This is a real show. Well,
I'm always aware. I just don't want it to turn into some terrible, like, however you feel about 24-hour news, but like some 24-hour news show where they're shouting over each other. Like,
right.
I know I hate that.
Yeah, but a little bit of that to start is kind of fun. So we got it out of our systems. Anyway, Erika and Andrea, this is going to be a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this. And this has been in my mind actually for quite some time. So when I first introduced you to each other, I thought, no, I'm going to have them both on our show here. And so here we are. Yay!
Josh has been plotting our relationship, and Andrea and I easily became friends.
There's a master plan.
We come as a package deal these days.
That's right.
That's great. So, Andrea, tell us a little about yourself and your background.
I'm a dating and relationship coach, and I didn't get into this field until about 5 years ago. I was a filmmaker living abroad, had a small production company. I was planning on bringing it back to LA, and I landed in Central California and thought, oof, I don't know if I can do the LA thing again. I don't know if I can get back into this industry. Yeah. I just don't feel like the work I do helps anyone, and I want to be able to help people. And I was really getting involved with a lot of nonprofit work at the time, just so that I could feel like I was giving back somehow. So I made the huge leap and my ripe old age and said, screw it, I'm going to do a career change. I didn't know what I was going to get into and started hosting local speed dating events because that seemed like fun. And it is. It's a lot of fun. I loved it. I still do them when we're not in a pandemic. Obviously, I do respect the pandemic, but it slowly morphed into, people really need help with dating. I would walk around the event and hear some of the questions people were being asked and thought, oof, you're not going anywhere with these questions. This is not an interview process. So I decided to take the proper path and get certified in life coaching, relationship coaching, and NLP as well. And it allowed me to bring in some of my background, but now I do group coaching, I do one-to-one coaching, I do online courses for people. I really want to make sure people are really getting the help they need to be the best version of themselves when they're dating.
Yeah. Good for you.
Thanks.
I mean it. That's really needed. Yeah. Erika.
So,
and we all know a little bit about you already, but I just want to give you a chance to say it again.
Yes, I'm a mental and sexual health therapist. So my background is all things brain and body related. So that is the nerddom I exist in.
I like that.
So I own my own group practice, which I have other therapists that work for me because I wish I could see all of the people, but I cannot see all of the people. And so I've thought what a better way to be able to see more people is to then also train other therapists and be a support to them so they can continue to do I very much believe in therapy and mental health. I wouldn't if I wasn't in this field. But it really did. It opened up the door for me to be able to essentially just expand our ability to be helping. So I have wonderful therapists that work for me, and some of the folks who are listening, if they do listen to my show, the podcast Sex Talk with Erika Miley, they'll actually meet some of them. So we've done some Meet the Therapist episodes, which I think will be really helpful when people are looking for people to connect with, because that's when therapy works, is when you connect with the therapist.
Yeah. Life's about connections.
Mm-hmm.
Without them, we die. Yeah. And so why are we all talking today?
So Andrea and I both, we both run our own businesses, right? Like we both come from leadership roles, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And I think we were talking before we all started recording, just kind of figured out this common thread that we have, which is it's being a woman and a leader changed the way our relationships operate, friendships, marriages, dating. It changed all of that for us. And we were talking about how we just have this common experience, and Josh was like, that seems like a big deal that we should all be talking about. Like, what does it mean to be a woman and a leader, and how does it impact your ability to have relationships generally? Because it changes them.
Yeah. Relationships and sex.
No. Yes.
Yeah. Not that the two should coincide. No, I'm just kidding. Oh goodness, because it's so complex. We're going to dive into some complex things, and so the Lord and the universe be with us.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So let's just jump in, and maybe Andrea, I think you want to talk just a little bit about your background and how this springs from some personal experience. If you still do, go for that, and if not, I'll edit that part out.
Definitely. No, absolutely. I think it's really important to be able to share some of my personal experience on top of my professional experience. There's always this misunderstanding that because I'm not married, I'm probably not a good coach. And coaching and playing do not go hand in hand. And I like to always use sports references because for some reason people just really get that. And think of like the NBA coaches that have never played, but they're amazing coaches. And the fact that, you don't sit down in a therapist office and ask your therapist about their personal life. So stop freaking asking me.
They do.
Do they really?
No, but I get the same concern though too. Is like, well, how can you help me with this if you've never been through it? And I think there is that we have to dispel that myth. And I think your analogy with sports actually is a really, really good one. It's helpful to help people understand. Like, I don't have to have had every experience in life to be able to help you with yours.
Exactly.
Amen. Yeah.
Definitely. So in my personal experience now, this kind of what happened since I've started coaching, and I've started my own podcast where potential dates can go and find and listen to my advice, not realizing that the episode they're listening to, while it may have just aired, it's recorded months in advance. So if I'm talking about someone who I was dating at that time, that was months ago. And often what happens now is I go on a date with someone, they Google me, they find the podcast, and on the second date, they start throwing my own advice back at me. And it's like, oh, that's the end of this relationship. It was nice knowing you.
But not even so nice.
Right. Have a nice life.
Yeah.
Call me if you need a coach.
So what are some of the dynamics that are driving somebody doing that from your perspective?
To
make the comments, to throw that back in your face, to what's going on there?
For one, I think when it comes to men, they think this is their way of connecting. Like, look, I listened to your podcast. I actually retained some information from your podcast. but you don't need to throw it back at me. I know my information, and it's fine if you want to come to me and say, like, I listened to your podcast, I found it really interesting, or ask questions about it. But, I went on a second date with a guy, and he was like, I was listening to this podcast, and she suggested by this point I should be making a move. What do you think about that? And I was like, you listen to my podcast, you jerk.
Right? Like, and why not just say like, oh, hey, I heard you say this thing. I thought it was a really interesting thing. Why not ask about it? And just like accuse you like they were going to catch you in something.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I friend zoned him, and he got really mad and never called again and ghosted me. But you know what? It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's really dive into the I've interviewed probably 1,000 women as an employer for potential employees over the years, and then 60 or so women on the show. So I've gained a little bit of a perspective, but I'd really like you two to inform me in this hour, 3 hours that we're going to, hour that we're going to be talking, just about what it looks like to be a woman in leadership, a woman in influence, and the dynamics that come to play, how you have to react and respond to men being maybe not the best, not at their best. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I know there's so much going on in there. And so let's maybe just try to chip away at this big iceberg, because things are changing, the landscape is changing, and we are in a second rise of maybe a third rise of feminism. And that's phenomenal. And we're in Me Too, and the awareness is gaining. And both of you, I think, and when we were talking prior to this, had mentioned that men are sort of unsettled and don't really know where they stand now, as women are gaining power and coming into positions of power, even though Fortune 500 is still 93% helmed by men and boarded by men. Still, I think it's apropos. I mean, I think many of the men up at that level and across industries are losing power, or perceptionally losing power. And so it's shifting things. So yeah, go for it. What is it? All of that jibber jabber, what does that spark within each of you?
You even said like not even just the Fortune 500, even in my field, which is primarily dominated by women, the leadership in universities is primarily men.
Interesting.
Even though it is a field that is primarily dominated by women. Which I'm like, okay, representation and seeing yourself matters a whole lot. But I mean, your question about like how we're experiencing men often when in our relationships and just even in our personal lives, I can say in my friendships, I've been married for 14 years. And so many times when I'm making any kind of friendships now with men, it is, I know that and I won't speak to any of the women that are listening, but I know that sometimes I'll hang back with what I do first, because often I will get, the response I get is silence, defensiveness, or how the other part of it, which I think is a different concern, which is that if I'm at a certain level of education, then that means I'm better than them. Like that's like their perception of me, that I think that I'm better than them because I have a certain level of education. And that is not the case. That's not how I feel. I was raised in poverty and come from a very blue collar town. And like my background, I'm first generation college student. Like my background does not dictate for me to see them that way. But that is the belief from like moment one. So it's like
it's competitive right off the bat.
Exactly. Like you must think because I do blank, because I work in this industry that you are better than me. I fundamentally don't believe that. But there are these barriers to having relationship, regardless of romance or not, that is palatable. So it's almost like I have to do a lot of like other kinds of work. So I'll often the friendships that I do make with men, usually if they're in a heterosexual relationship, come from having relationships with their female partner. And so it's almost like, okay, that gateway is acceptable. But I'm not going to interact with you and understand you or invest in a relationship with you. I will with your husband, but I won't with you, because there's these threats.
Wow, that's just way too much work. That's way too much work.
I want to nap now. And we were just talking about it. I'm like, I'm tired.
That was 5 minutes in.
Tired.
Oh my goodness. Interesting. So how can it become easier? Not going, and we talked about this, the fun and easy, right? On the dating sites.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Oh, Andrea needs to tell people about that. The men's side of dating.
Go for that. Yeah, because that's a bit actually that's a big discussion right there. So go for it. But that can tie right in. Yeah, fun and easy.
Fun and easy. Yeah, guys, if you're listening to this, quit with the fun and easy. Life is not fun and easy. Relationships are not fun and easy. They take effort. You have to be willing to put in the effort. You know, on so many dating sites, I see men saying they're just looking for something fun and easy. And they just want women who will just go with whatever they want to do. And they don't want to have to put in the work. But you know what? If it's worth it, if it's worth being in this relationship, then it's worth the work. And I'm not saying it has to be a constant challenge, and it doesn't have to be or feel difficult. It doesn't have to feel like an uphill battle. But life just doesn't come that easily. And to me, that feels very entitled when men want just fun and easy.
Interesting.
It also sounds like, and I might be making a big assumption here on my part. It sounds like the assumption is that they're fun and easy. They're fun and easy. When in reality, like I have worked with men very intimately in my practice, and they're just as messy as we are. Just as many feelings, just as many issues, and just as concerned about how they are seen, just as much want to be desired by other people. So the entire idea that
I agree 100%. They hide it more than women do. They hide their emotions. They hide their sensitivities because it doesn't look manly or masculine enough for them. It doesn't, portray this big man that they feel like they need to be. And so they hide it where we express it. And I think that's where that disconnect comes into play too. You're not so fun and easy, mister. You're just as challenging because you're not so open with your emotions. You're not very open with your sensitivities.
So when all day about just the cultural expectation of it all too, like we could just be here all day about that. But I think you're saying something that's really important is the when you're putting yourself out there as a woman, this is the brick walls or several brick walls that you're facing, especially if you are coming from the perspective of I'm highly educated, I'm smart, I got my own money. I'm coming from a very capable place. I just want you to meet me in that capable place. I don't need you to walk me through something. I'm here on my own 2 feet. I just need you on your own 2 feet.
I agree. There are 2 things on a first date I will not talk about because I know they're intimidating. One is the countries I've lived in and the fact that I'm well traveled and that I've lived in Asia, I've lived in Europe, I've lived everywhere. So I don't talk about that because it's intimidating to men. And I don't talk about my education. I don't talk about any of my degrees. If anything, I went to ASU for undergrad and that's all they get to know. Because
Mhm.
if I start talking about all of my education, they become extremely intimidated and not realizing that it doesn't make me any smarter. It doesn't make me any better than them. It's
Mhm.
just, it on paper, it sounds intimidating.
Well, but here, I don't know if I'm challenging that statement or not, but what if you are smarter and better? Why is that a problem? Why is that?
I
Why does
don't
that
think
have to
you
be
can
a
see that
problem?
on a first date, though. I don't think that, because just hearing, okay, she's educated, she's well traveled, she must be better than me. Or they think
Mhm.
that I come from money,
Okay,
like
Mhm.
Erika
which is
mentioned,
yeah,
and I
Yep.
don't. You know, I've
right.
worked very hard for everything that I've acquired in life. No one gave me anything. I've paid for my own
That's right.
educations. I'm still paying for
Mhm.
my own educations. Let's just
Same.
student loans just don't disappear, unfortunately.
Right, like this is our way to let you know that we're all in debt, just like you.
Right, right. So I've worked very, very hard to get where I'm at. I don't want to come across as a sense of entitled either. And I really don't want the male who's sitting across the table, who I've only known for about an hour probably,
Mhm.
to think that I'm going to challenge him in some negative way. I want him to ease into it and to eventually learn these things, to realize that I am still just a regular human
Hmm.
with
Mhm.
feelings, making the same mistakes that all other women make.
Hmm.
It's kind of interesting that we're having this conversation because I'm just hearing us, Andrea, you and I both, like this is how we've learned to. Oh, I'm gonna make a hot statement. Caretake our
Yes.
partners or caretake men before we
Yes.
ever get there, right?
Yeah.
Like, because the
That's
risk for
true.
us has always been pretty great, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
as far as high level, I mean, like the risk for us, we have to essentially plan for the defenses before they happen and then mitigate them as we go.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, that's a hell of a lot of work.
It's that emotional labor we do. That's for damn
Yeah.
sure.
Always.
It becomes second nature. I
Mhm.
almost don't even think about it. And until you just mentioned that, I don't realize that you're right. Every time I sit down to meet a new person, whether
Mhm.
it's intimately or as friend or even networking for business,
Exactly.
I have to make sure I'm placating them.
Yeah. All
Yes.
Every
these
single
levels.
conversation.
Hmm.
I hope you're listening. I hope your listeners have got us in their ears somewhere and that you can just sit with that for a minute. Like, as
Mhm.
women, leaders in business, wherever you are across the board, I hope you're listening. I hope you just take a deep breath and ground yourself in the moment and realize, oh shit, that is something I do. And ultimately, it's not. We're not here to call you out on it.
No,
It's
no.
to just say this is the reality of what it means to exist as a woman, as a leader.
Let's, as men and women, acknowledge that that's the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it devalues everyone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that when I was working with folks who've committed sex offenses in the prison setting,
Mhm.
that was one of the things I tried to help them understand, that how you experience women and how women experience you, maybe this unsaid dynamic that's happening,
Mhm.
or dynamics, various
Mhm.
ones, which we've already named, is impacting both of us in a negative way. You're losing too.
Taking
Men
from
are
both.
losing too in this.
Yeah.
They are not getting to connect quickly. They're not getting to express their feelings. They're not getting to do those things. And we're having to protect ourselves in many ways and don't get to connect, don't get to do those things. So
Mhm.
it's a lose. It's a lose-lose for everybody. We get way more opportunity. When we get to connect to others legitimately, vulnerably, authentically, we get so much more out of those interactions.
Hmm. And so I see, to a certain degree, that it takes, so for a woman who's in influence, you got to be strong
Mm.
to be there. And then you're interacting with men who to have that healthy, and we'd mentioned this briefly, to have that healthy relationship, to have healthy dynamics, the man has to be strong too. The man has to be strong enough to let go.
Mm-hmm.
The man has to be strong enough to, with strength, there's a little bit of selflessness. You're just not, it's not about you as much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what is this aggressive, competitive, self-focused dynamic that we have within toxic masculinity in across industries? That what the hell is going on with that? Can you tell me how I got here? Here, now I'm asking you to comment.
Beautiful question, though. How did I get here? I don't know what to do.
How did all of me, all the me's, how did we get to this? And that's huge. But some drivers, some things that are going on that are creating, that are promoting this perspective that men have. Can you comment on that?
I think they're feeling a little lost. And so that's that pushback. You go to extremes, right? Men, and at least I see in the relationships, the men I coach, and even the women I coach, the men that they're going on dates with, they are so confused on where their new place is. They have been raised by baby boomers, most of them, in some capacity, whether it was a direct parent or a grandparent, who taught them the value of work. The man works, and then he has a family, and he provides for that family. And so society has been teaching men for generations that is their place, is to provide for their family. And now what do they do when the woman can provide and she doesn't need him to be the provider anymore? He doesn't know where his place is now. And he's lost and confused. And so he's pushing back harder and harder in the wrong direction, instead of just releasing and letting go of that need for, I'm supposed to be the provider. I am supposed to be the man of the house. I'm supposed to be the breadwinner. I'm supposed to be, you're not supposed to be anything. Just show up. Just be present and let the relationship unfold the way it needs to unfold, and stop trying to assume your role as a man.
I think you're saying something so important. I took that to, like, as you were talking about it, I took it to a personal place, and my husband luckily is very familiar with how how much I talk about it, maybe our lives together, either on shows. So he's cool with me telling this story. He and I were actually probably 2 weeks ago just talking about this, because he helps, he's the co-owner of my business, my group practice. And we serve two very different roles. So I am the clinical director. I cultivate the therapist. I help choose the therapist. I encourage their growth. And I encourage the business's growth based on what I know about people. How do we interact with the clients? How you as administrative staff should understand how we interact with clients and with people in pain. Because it's a different way to interact in business than if you're selling a product. It is very, very different. But his role is integral and needed and necessary. But he's talked very much about this. Like, I have, from the time I was a little kid, my father showed me, even without telling me, that his value was wrapped around how much money he was pulling in. And actual dollar for dollar amount. And so I'm the one who actually brings in the hourly amount, right? Like, I am billed for services. That's how therapy works. And so his job doesn't necessarily have that one-to-one connection. And he talked about how difficult that is to, like, reframe your sense of leadership, not only in your own head, while also reframing it within your own family system. And then teaching your son something different that is nothing you've seen in your family.
This just got me thinking a lot because I got boys. Intentionality.
It is. It's hard. It's a hard thing to challenge within yourself, and I have to challenge in myself as a woman all the time. And I think I said this before we started recording. I'm stepping into being smart as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And being okay with stepping into that I don't have to hold anybody else's hand to make them feel good about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's usually how it goes. Where
Mm-hmm.
I meet someone new, whether it's in networking, whether it's in friendship, whether what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to spend a lot of time like holding their hand. And I'm stepping into now, like, no, I don't have to apologize for how smart I am.
So what is there's cost, right?
Woo, yeah.
If you step fully into being smart as fuck,
Mm-hmm.
there's cost. If you are accommodating, you take on the cost. If you don't accommodate, well, you still take on the cost. It's just different cost.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a balance? Should there be a balance? Should we screw the balance and should women screw the balance? Just go for it. What do you think? What do you feel?
So I have, and aside from my clinical background, I've been through trauma myself. And for me, I'm not going to say that a woman should choose anyway, because I think that this really does depend on where you've been, how you've come through your life. I have experienced sexual assault in my life. And for me, I won't say screw it, especially initially when I'm meeting somebody, because my threat system, powered by that wonderful amygdala in my head, that fight or flight or freeze,
Mm-hmm.
when I feel that, I have to deal with then the physiological experience of watching somebody else essentially be threatened by me, especially a man, being very threatened by my just existence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I will do some placating and education up front to save myself some real frustrating physical experience of that old trauma. But that's me. That's my stuff, right? Like I'm never going to look at a woman and say, you do it different or you do it the same, because I do think we have to individually consider like, okay, what's going on in the background for me? Yes, I'm stepping into being smart as fuck, but how do I do that in the most safest, conscientious way that I need to do that? That might mean that I have to do a little, like Andrea said, like not put my education out first when I'm talking to maybe trying to be a friend with a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Andrea, what do you think?
I wish that we could just flip the script and let women just be who they naturally are. But I just honestly don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't see us getting to that point, not in my lifetime at least. So unfortunately, I feel like we still have to find that balance, and that balance is challenging. I always talk about the masculine and feminine energy, because everyone, whether you're male or female, doesn't matter what you're identifying as, you have both. You're putting out both types of energy, and women in particular put out a lot of masculine energy when they are in their work. To be a leader, they are tapping into that masculine energy. But when they're coming home to their relationship is where it gets complicated, because they get stuck in it 8, 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes, of work. And we need to be able to decide if we're going to leave that masculine energy at the office and sit in our femininity and allow our partners to be the masculine energy, or if we're going to start shifting it, and men are going to have to learn how to tap into their feminine energy to offset their partner's masculinity. And it's all energy related. It's just where your mindset is, making sure that, you're getting the self-care that you need, the support that you need. That is the shift I think has to start happening. And I see it sometimes. To give you guys some credit, I do see you guys tapping into that feminine energy a little bit more. and kind of offsetting that masculinity that your partner is presenting in those moments.
Are there and so with that, with the offsetting, when the woman comes home, can the man, can it even out? Is that what you're saying? Can it, I mean, even out between the two of them so they can commune?
Right, especially if there's children involved. If she comes home and she's been in this masculine energy, this do ambition, she needs those moments, to be able to get back into her femininity. And the way that she does that is by doing some self-care. So even if you allow her the 20 or 30 minutes to kind of reset back into her feminine energy, whatever it takes for her, every woman is different. Sometimes a hot bubble bath and a glass of wine or a candle or something like that can switch you back and recharge you and allow you to kind of pull back into that feminine energy for your family and be that nurturer. But if she's not given that time and that support to do that, she's going to get stuck a little bit.
I think you're saying something that's really important. I work from a perspective that includes a lot of mindfulness. And it's not even just mindfulness. We're not just talking about sitting on a pillow, going and yoga. We're not just talking about that. Like there are elements of meditation that are like that. But what I'm talking about here in this scenario, what you just described, is giving either person a moment to be able to shift gears does take an act of mindfulness of like, okay, I am home. Let me take 15 deep breaths. Let me shift some gears in my head. Okay, this is where I am. This is what I'm doing. This is who I'm with now. I am no longer at the office. I am no longer running my business. I am no longer doing these things. I am with the people I love and care about. And that it might just be that thought process, or it might even be like giving yourself an opportunity to pick up, like I use the Calm app all the time. Okay, I need 5 minutes to just let it all go, because you may actually want to be, as a woman, maybe you do sit in that masculine energy all day. Maybe when you get home, you want to sit in your feminine energy, and we can talk about how that plays out in sex. I can't tell you how many times when I work with very powerful women, very powerful CEOs, very powerful healthcare providers, very powerful, smart ass women. And sometimes when they get home or when they want to have sex with their partner, they want to submit. And this is different than like obeying. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about letting go and being someone telling you what to do sexually. We're talking a little bit about BDSM and letting it is. They talk about how erotic it is to let somebody dictate exactly what's happening in the bedroom, and taking that masculine energy, which doesn't matter what kind of genitalia you have.
Exactly.
Taking that masculinity and using it in the bedroom and to essentially play with the dynamics that we're all talking about. Some of us are talking about, like us on this show, but we're all influenced by these dynamics.
We're all thinking about it.
Yeah, we're all thinking about it. We're all experiencing these dynamics. And when you are actually like talking about it and planning for that, we're just being honest about these dynamics that are already in existence.
I'll admit, that's my sex life right there. That's it. You nailed it.
Do tell.
Men
No, I'm
assume.
kidding.
No, I don't mind sharing. Men assume that they see me. They'll look me up online. They're like, wow, I have videos that they can watch. So obviously, I'm a leader, or trying to become a leader in my field. I'm an expert in my field, but that's my work. And when it comes to men in the bedroom, when it comes to sex, they're always shocked when I want to take a back seat to having the power. I want him to take charge, and I'll ask him to do certain things, and he's just, what? This doesn't seem like something you would want. You seem like you're always in control, but being in control of my business is different. I don't want to be in control of the relationship. I don't want to be in control in a sexual relationship with someone.
Mhm.
I want you to throw me around, dude.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, I
Mhm.
have a similar experience. Like they assume mental and sexual health therapist. You're a sex therapist. You must like every kinky piece of like you must want to watch the craziest porn. You must want to do all the things. And that's just fundamentally untrue. Just because I'm a nerd doesn't mean that dictates exactly how it goes in the bedroom.
Hmm.
And I'm similar to you in that way. Like I want somebody to take charge and throw me on the bed and show me what's up. Show me.
Mhm.
Show me what's
Why?
up.
Why?
I think there's just something incredibly erotic about seeing your person in their element. And it requires a certain level of confidence. And I think that you can see your person in their element in sex. You can see them in their element in work. You can see them in their element if they play a sport, if they like to dance, if they're whatever it is. When you see your partner in their element, like they are confident in what they are doing, it is highly erotic.
Interesting. Hmm.
I agree.
I asked why because as a man and experiencing some of these dynamics, being the guy, and it's tricky to respond.
Fair.
Yeah, because of that shift in the middle, and in with sexuality, it's so complex, and there's so much power, and so much emotion and shame
Mhm.
as a man, and it throwing that in there is it's tricky on top of tricky. And this is not to eschew, and off put the responsibility, but it sounds it's really yeah, I won't go further.
No,
You're right.
I don't want to
I
rat
think
it
you're
out.
onto something though.
Yeah.
I really do think you're onto something. I think the layers of toxic masculinity, this is one of those where you don't get to be as honest about what you want sexually. You don't get to talk about what you want sexually, and you're expected to want sex all the time and be good at it
Hmm.
and have a giant penis. Like all of those expectations are
Every
really,
last
really
one.
high. And then like I honestly think that that's why the folks who belong to the like BDSM world, people who are out about being kinky or out about being like playing with these dynamics and doing it with being very clear about it, actually find more success because they are saying out loud and giving guidelines to exactly how this will happen.
Yeah.
And then everybody is following consent along the way. So like, okay, you want to do this? You want to do this? Is this okay? Okay, what about this thing? And how do you feel if I do this? And then the other partner knows exactly what's going to happen, gives consent or not. And then afterwards, you do essentially something called aftercare. You have a conversation about what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an entire set of guidelines for
Continue.
how to do this. And I think that that's why a lot of us are fantasizing about BDSM, one, and two, how often the BDSM community as a whole ends up being able to at least navigate these dynamics
Better.
in many occasions better.
Mhm. Interesting. Why don't we communicate along these lines better? Why don't we set boundaries, set expectations? Why don't we more open about talking about sex and relationships in this manner? What stops that?
It
I think
all
it's fear.
started in 1492.
Whoa, we're going way back.
How
Yeah,
many
a few
witches
more
were
hours.
burned? How many, like, we could just, like, that really it does. There is puritanical and religiosity threads throughout every part of this. And it may be really, 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 it may not be super apparent to the person that that's where a lot of their stuff comes from, but it does come from family systems, how those families talk about sex or not, because guess what? When you don't talk about sex, it becomes the elephant in the room that is just invisible. You still hit it, you still trip over it, you still come face to face with it. You're just not acknowledging that it's there.
So where does it come from? 1492. You said you touched on it I want to hear a little bit about that.
I use 1492 because the Columbus sailed the ocean blue rhyme that they taught us all in the 90s in school came up in my head. But really, it does start with some of those those early church threads from various church traditions, whether it's evangelical, whether it's Catholicism, whether it's Mormonism. Again and again and again and again, when a person comes into my office, a lot of times their shame is directly related to how they were communicated to about sex or not, and it is very much usually connected to the religious perspective of their families.
That makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. Do you know
and a lot of times it completely seeped into our education system, especially during I want to specifically highlight the purity movement during the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. The purity movement directly seeped into public schools. So that very much, like the abstinence only education movement, was directly tied to some of this purity movement. So many of us are impacted by this, even in a religious way, even if our families weren't.
Yeah, we don't even know where it came from.
And we have a lack of education. Sex education is about abstinence first and foremost. And then maybe we'll talk about birth control and condoms and STDs. But what about communication? Why are we not teaching kids how to communicate? If you're going to have sex, learn how to communicate before, during, and after.
Yes, absolutely. And
God,
even about our bodies. Even about our bodies. Like we're not teaching kids how to, I can't tell you how many parents I've watched who are like, no, you got to go hug Uncle so-and-so. Oh, no, you got to go hug grandma. Oh, no, you got to go hug this person. Like, oh, yep. Oh, you don't want to give him. No, you go kiss him. Go say goodbye. Tell him you love him. Like, when in reality, that might even be the person that's harming your child. Because guess what? That's where most by most sexual offenses come from. Is someone, a person, or a kid knows.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I started with my kids was like, no, you get some body autonomy even young. If you don't want to go hug somebody, or if you're not feeling comfortable with your body being touched in that way, or if you don't want to show somebody your body, you do not have to. And in school, you keep your body to yourself.
That is both of the yes. Preach it. It should be not sex. I mean, it should be called not sex education right now, because that's what it's coming. We're starting off from the wrong place.
Yeah.
Rather than communication.
That's a brilliant point, because you're right. When you're a teenager, it's not right now, but eventually. And when you get to that eventually, you want to know how to ask for consent, how to communicate what you like and don't like, and how to talk about it afterwards.
Oh, and we are really not comfortable, especially in the United States, with talking about that we become sexual creatures when puberty starts. That we think that if we take the reins off, these teenagers are just going to have all of the sex. It's like, y'all, they are going to learn about their bodies and the pleasure of their bodies with or without you. And I think it's better with you. I think it's better for you to be able to help give them context, because Google does not give a shit about how old you are. And your kid is going to go ask Google exactly what their questions are.
Yep.
And Google won't hold back.
Nope.
Whereas you can help along the way. The conversation about bodies and sex and dating and relationships should really begin so much earlier, because it's a fundamental part of our cultural traditions. It's a fundamental part of our family traditions. It's a fundamentally part of our existence. Why are we not including it as part of our what we truly connect with our children about?
We're scared. Yeah. At least I'm scared. And I've got 3 boys and they're growing up. And I think I haven't got everything. I think this is just from my perspective and just responding, because you're making me think so much. I think I don't have this all figured out.
Nope.
how do I engage my sons in something I don't have all figured out? I think I'm starting off on the wrong foot. I shouldn't have to have it all figured out, right? But that's
say that the minute you say that to your kids, like it puts you on a different foot. It helps the kid know that you're not going to be the knower of all the things, but hey, let's find out together. Let's figure it out, because I want to help you figure it out. I want you to be able to figure it out on your own terms and not when you're trying to figure it out on the fly.
literally. Yeah.
You're not kidding.
Interesting. And so women in leadership all over the world are having to figure it out for the men that they're around and for their kids and for everybody around them. Is that correct?
Oh, good distillation. Yes. And now I want a nap. You said it out loud. Now I'm just like, okay, all you ladies out there, we just want a nap.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a lot of
Just
work.
take a nap. A lot of work. Yeah. And so how can it change? If there's one thing, and because we're rounding up on an hour real quick, from each of you, if there's one big thing that can change to really impact this, what could it be?
I'll go first.
Go for
Erika,
it.
you look like you're thinking.
Think.
I think that men need to know that it's okay to ask for what she needs. It's okay to take a step back and not have the answers and to just simply ask, what do you need from me? It's okay to not have all the answers, because men want to fix things all the time. They want to come with all the answers and all the solutions to every problem, but they don't need to. And so if they can come into a relationship, whether it's an intimate one or a platonic one, to know, I don't have to have all the answers for her. I can help her come up with them if she needs, but let me just ask her what she needs from me. And that will set a new bar.
I love that. Asking, what do you need? I think that when I'm working with couples, I think that's probably one of the most powerful tools that we can offer people is just curiosity. Can you sit back and be a curious human being for just a minute, regardless of what your genitalia is like? Can you sit back and go, oh, what am I missing here? What do I don't have? What don't I know? And when you infuse curiosity into a conversation, it really, really can take the defenses down really, really fast. But my answer to the question, and this isn't just to fill my therapists, but I can from my own experience in therapy, having started in therapy well before I ever thought about becoming a therapist myself. Therapy and learning about yourself, understanding your feelings, and then learning how to communicate those things can absolutely provide you freedom that you never knew you could have. And so I would encourage anybody that's listening, regardless of how you identify, go to therapy. Walk with somebody while you're trying to figure this out. That's really my job, is that I get to I feel so honored every time I get to do it, where I get to walk with somebody on their journey, even if for a brief time, to help them understand themselves better. How fucking cool is that? And I want to offer that as a gift to all of you. I want to say, like, it is a gift to understand yourself truly. It is not selfish. It is not it is not a waste of time. It is fundamentally changing how you exist in the world.
It's giving a gift to other people too.
Yes.
Yeah.
When somebody says you need to go to therapy, it's not an insult. It's, no, I think you deserve this gift. I think you deserve to have somebody walk with you in an unbiased way that can help you, that is rooting for you.
I love it. You guys have made me think a lot, and that's good. I really appreciate both of you and taking the time. This has been a pleasure.
Appreciate you having us.
Absolutely. Yeah.